Now, the poet, professor of the streets, Lowkey, renowned hip-hop artist, host of the Watchdog podcast, and political campaigner extraordinaire, joins us now. Lowkey, I'm very glad that you came on the show. I watched earlier the latest little short film that you made on Double Down News, I think, which made pretty miserable reading. And I know that neither you nor I wish to gratuitously cause division amongst the Arabs. Heaven knows there's enough division between them already. But when you see in your film the sheer extent of the treachery, treason by so many of the Arab rulers, and not just Arab, Muslim rulers, Turkey and others, it is difficult not to howl at the moon, frankly. That's what I felt like doing when I saw your piece. I wanted to howl in rage. Just give us the small version of it.
Well, it's well known that Jordan has been intercepting missiles from Iran over its airspace in order that they do not get anywhere near Israel. It's known that Jordan, the UAE, and Saudi Arabia formed a land bridge to circumvent the blockade of the Yemeni armed forces of the Israeli port of Eilat, which was subsequently bankrupt. It's also known that Egypt has collaborated with the blockade of Gaza since me and you entered Gaza, George. You will remember the experience we went through on the Egyptian side there for several days. And of course, what else Egypt has done is in the early days of the genocide, Ibrahim Arjani, a businessman very close to Abdel Fattah al-Sisi, was essentially extorting the population of Gaza and charging them ridiculous amounts of money, making millions of dollars every day in extortion money to get them out of the Gaza Strip, away from the genocide. But it really doesn't stop there. That is literally just scratching the surface. When you look on the more economic side of what has been built, especially post the Abraham Accords, you have literally the airspace above Palestine managed by an Israeli company called Highlander. Now, that company is partly owned by the UAE state. The UAE has a state-owned arms company called Edge Group, which is a part owner of Highlander Aviation. In addition to that, the company by the name of Third Eye Systems, it's again an Israeli intelligence company, has an AI system called the Ghost Soldier, which essentially Israeli military forces send out before they make an incursion in Gaza to better protect themselves from what will happen. Now, that company is 30% owned by Edge Group, the UAE state-owned company. And there's loads of other examples. You could look at, for example, the Jared Kushner-founded Affinity Partners, which was founded with money from the Saudi government, $2 billion from the Saudi government. Kushner took that money and invested it directly into something called the Shlomo Group. Now, the Shlomo Group is the largest shipbuilding company in Israel. It builds almost all of the Israeli Navy. In addition to that, the Shlomo Group equipped the Shaudag unit of the Israeli military, which carried out the El Shifa hospital raid, which killed many people and led to doctors being abducted for very long periods of time, and one even being killed, raped to death, in fact, in Sidi Tayman, the well-known Israeli prison camp. On top of that, the organization, the Affinity Partners, which is backed not only by the Saudis, but also Qatari money, UAE money as well. This organization is partly an owner of Phoenix Holdings, another Israeli company, which is one of the top shareholders in Elbit Systems. That's Israel's largest arms company, 2 million shares in Elbit Systems. And really, it doesn't stop there. When you look at the Turkish example, you have someone by the name of Ahmed Zorlu, who's a close friend of Erdogan. Now, Zulu was 25% shareholder, one of the largest shareholders in an Israeli company called Dorad Energy. Dorad Energy provides Israeli military bases with electricity. It is a known fact that Turkey has for decades been training Israeli pilots in the Konya Air Base. In addition to that, you of course have the example of Erdogan's son, who has long been accused of trading with Israel, but actually a Turkish journalist by the name of Meten Cihan pointed out, according to figures from the Turkish, the Istanbul Chamber of Commerce, that a shipping company belonging to Erdogan's son, Burak Erdogan, was trading with Israel throughout the genocide. And there are many, many more examples of the way in which the political and economic elites of the region are tied in and integrated really with a lot of the Israeli military infrastructure, actually. And so, George, when it comes to the point of the attack on Iran, you have the Site K base in Turkey, the radar base, which is alleged to have been used in detecting some of the Iranian rockets that have shot towards the Zionist entity and helped block it. And so really, unfortunately, this is a regional issue whereby the political and business elites do not represent the people that they rule. And now, with the case of Iran, the clarity that is developing among people will eventually not reflect very well on these people. And history will certainly not be kind to them. As you know, George, when you broke the siege of Gaza twice, not once, but twice, at great risk to your physical and political life, this was something that in years later, history has smiled upon. Because to make that leap of faith and carry that out with groups of people from around the world, it took great bravery. And when I look back, for example, on what we saw in Gaza and the people we met in Gaza for the short time we were there, it breaks my heart to think that not only does that place no longer exist, but I'm sure many of those people, those faces that we saw, the children that we saw greeting you as you came into Gaza and we came with you, they no longer exist. And the crime that has been committed here really will echo and reverberate across the centuries, actually. Netanyahu is really one of the great killers of human history. And also now we have a battle for the soul of Donald Trump, George. And as you know, much of his base are deeply opposed to getting involved in wars. They're not the neocons, but he's being pushed into this war by the very same people that caused the Iraq war. Who do you think is in the leadership of the United Against the Nuclear Iran organization? None other than Jeb Bush, the brother of George Bush. Who else do you think is in the leadership of that organization? Mark Wallace, who was a US rep at the United Nations at the time of the Iraq war. Who else is on the advisory board of United Against the Nuclear Iran? None other than Mir Dagan, who was the head of Israel's external intelligence agency, Mossad, at the time of the Iraq invasion. These are the people that brought us that horrific war which killed over 1 million people. Now Donald Trump is in a battle for his soul. Does he take the position that Israel wants him to take and paralyze the global economy when the Strait of Hormuz gets shut down, when Bab el-Mandeb in the Red Sea gets shut down, when the oil platforms in the region are shut down? Or does he go even further, which it seems his ambassador in Israel, Mike Huckabee, is pushing him to do, which is use a nuclear weapon and go down as one of the most evil individuals in human history? Or does he take the other position, which is to allow Israel to sleep in the bed that it has made for itself, the river of blood that it has built in the region, and really understand what has happened across these last decades? Which will Donald Trump do? To be honest, I think your guess will be more informed than mine on this topic.
Well, given all of that, how sincerely can you take the pronouncements from Erdogan through the royals of Saudi Arabia, even King Abdullah of Jordan, they have all denounced Israel's illegal attack, sneak attack on Iran, and warned of great destabilization to come. Are they secretly collaborating with the Israeli attack and with the American attack, which we'll know, I think, tomorrow or the next day, whether or not it comes? But it seems unlikely, given the chart that you've just drawn for us of their perfidy, that they are telling the truth when they say they're against Israel's attack on Iran.
Well, as you know, George, political pronouncements are generally perception management. What really counts is the infrastructure. As you'll remember with the Iraq War, you had numerous states in the region who were publicly against the Iraq War. However, when it was time for US troops to enter the country, from where did they come? They came from those bases in those countries. Saudi Arabia, as of today, has gathering on it US bombers on its military bases there. We know what they're there for. They are there to try and quell Iran's move, really, to represent the entirety of humanity. With Iran's defense of the Palestinian people, which even precedes the Islamic Revolution. What do I mean by that? When Khomeini and his followers were gathering for the Islamic Revolution and training in Lebanon, they were trained by none other than Khalil Wazir, who went on to be known as Abu Jihad, the head of intelligence for Yasser Arafat's Fatah. And since the Islamic Revolution, the Iranian government took at great cost to itself every single measure it could take to support the Palestinian factions, all of them, across the board. Whether you ask Talal Naji of the PFLP, he tells you the same thing. You ask Ziad Nakhala of the Palestinian Islamic Jihad, he said very clearly, Iran has given billions to the Palestinian factions. Saleh al-Aruri of Hamas said exactly the same thing. Iran is the only state in the world that has a yearly budget for the liberation of Palestine. And now the clarity has been established. Iran has not spent 50 years on vanity projects like other governments in the region. It has not spent 50 years trying to build up its reputation as a fashionable and trendy tourism destination, despite the fact it has great rich civilization worthy of all form of tourism. Iran has spent 50 years preparing for this battle. That is what has befuddled the Israelis and the Americans to such an extent. They cannot conceive of how this group of people have poured the brilliance of multiple generations of their society into developing not only ways to help humanity through stem cell research and other things, but also into AI and also into developing independent military capabilities. Not like the rest of the region, where their tanks cannot move an inch without US instructors. Not like the rest of the region who buy planes that they cannot operate. Iran has independently, self-sufficiently built its own military capabilities, which Israel is going to feel night after night in a war of attrition.
I sense, and I think you also alluded to it, and correct me if I'm wrong, that this particular episode, as opposed to the earlier so-called revolution in Syria, has brought Muslim public opinion together more than any time that I've known it. As you know, this whole question is bedeviled by sectarian hatred with extremists who care far more about how other Muslims pray than they do about the massacre of Palestinian children in Gaza. And they're not prepared to unite with someone who prays differently to them. But this particular moment feels to me like one that is uniting overwhelmingly most, of the 2 billion Muslims in the world. Do you see it that way?
The simple fact is this, George. Billions of people across the world including Muslims, have been sickened to their stomach and pained and cried themselves to sleep over images of Gaza. In the act of striking back at the Zionist entity in the way it has, Iran has assumed leadership of the Islamic civilization, but not just that. It's assumed leadership of the whole world. Iran is the forefront in the battle for civilization against savagery, against the normalization of killing children on an industrial scale day after day. Iran has taken that step. And the simple fact is this: you can no longer lie to people through the channels, the media channels, and through the scholars that are sponsored by particular states. People know the truth. And that has now been established off the back of this. So I hope you are right, and I hope people wake up from their long slumber.
Well, thank you for joining us. You've played a very significant role in lifting that consciousness to the level it is today, and it is indeed high. Although with Piers Morgan this week, I got another taste of the extent to which the establishment simply do not regard the great majority of humanity as being on any kind of plane with themselves. So when I say that the global majority is behind Iran, the answer to that is, yeah, but they're in Africa and Asia and Latin America, and they are in the global south, in the global east, they're in China and Russia. It's very clear that for people like Morgan, the golden billion, as they call the West, 1 billion out of 8 billion, are the only people who really count, even though there are hundreds of millions of people within the golden billion who are also supporting Iran against Israel in this conflict.
Absolutely, George. And the 20 fastest growing economies in the world, none of them are European. Several of them are former British colonies. Britain is projected to fall to the 11th largest economy in the world. The United States is scheduled to fall to the second, if not the third largest economy in the world. The future does not belong to these people. And in fact, the development of Britain, its industrialization on the back of deindustrializing and de-developing the rest of the world, of using it as captive labor and captive resources, was actually the aberration of human history. For a long, long time, before the establishment of the East India Company, India and China made up a large section of the global economy. We are now returning to a more natural economic equilibrium in this world. And I think for characters like Piers Morgan and others, it's going to be a real shock to the system, George.